Yeah, all right, I do have Francis Muhire, an economist. He's the founder of Yield Africa. He's also the CEO for Neo Econometric. I would like to talk about COVID-19 and so forth. Francis Muhire is also a lecturer at Makerere University Business School. Very good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Lomio.
Indeed, give us a situation analysis of how COVID-19 has affected our economy. What are we looking at now? Is there a bigger chance of our small and medium-sized enterprises actually pulling through? What is on the ground? What do you see? An exacerbation? What do you see?
Thank you, Romeo, and good morning, our dear viewers out there. Of course, COVID-19 continues to bite, and the most affected actually are micro and small enterprises, and this is actually where most of Ugandans lie. And, you know, they are struggling. They have been somehow left alone. We've seen government coming up with interventions, but the question is how much has those, you know, interventions been effective to, you know, keep them afloat. But talking about COVID-19, just I always say that COVID-19 is going to be here for a long time. We have short-term impacts and also long-term impacts.
You know, and you're going to say that whether or not government interventions were effective, we assume that this money reached them, but it was not enough to actually help them get resuscitated during this COVID-19 pandemic. But then the fact is they did not get any of this money.
Yeah, we saw in the first lockdown, the month that was released, 555 billion Uganda shillings, which was put in UD.
455.
No, 555. It never reached SMEs because, you know, UDB came out and said this money was not meant for struggling SMEs. And yet the justification to get this money was actually to help, you know, the struggling SMEs. But of course, we saw in this, the recent supplementary budget where the president allocated the elected Minister of Finance and the Bank of Uganda to get about 200 billion, you know, shillings for these SMEs.
And that's where we can talk about the effectiveness of now the 200 billion. Will it be enough?
Well, first of all, as I told you, micro and small enterprises, you know, they account for over 90% of our economy. So when you tell me that you're only allocating 200, you know, billion shillings, still for me, I look at it, you know, as dropping.
One trading center.
Yeah, you're just dropping, you know, just a drop in an ocean. And of course, not forgetting that even this 200 billion, it's only 100 billion that has been secured. The other 100 billion is going to be coming from the participating banks. In other words, they are going to be doing more domestic borrowing. They are going to borrow further from these, you know, commercial banks. And you know that also has an implication, you know, to push more, it will put more pressure on the price of capital or the interest rate. Yet our interest rate is already high. In fact, what the government should be doing right now is putting mechanism that will reduce the pressure or reduce the interest rate. That you don't have to go all these procedures to look for government help, but instead, if you go to the money market, if you go to the commercial banks or money or credit providers, you get credit at a cheap price. Yes.
All right, that is Francis Muhire. He is a lecturer at Makerere University Business School. He's also a founder of Yield Africa. He's also the CEO for Neo Econometric. So he comes with a wealth of information. Later on, we shall be joined by Honorable Ojara Martin Mapendusi, the MP Badeg Laibi. But for now, we are going to Koboko. There are some callous developments that pertain to the fact that some of the young people within this jurisdiction are killing themselves. Suicides are increasing in Koboko. Why? Would like to know. Rashola did a very good morning. Bring us up to speed with the latest developments coming in from this jurisdiction. What exactly is causing all these suicides?
I have to bring here that, you know, stress is one thing that one needs to learn how to control and sometimes also share problems. Now, for the case of Koboko, the leaders have expressed concern over the rising cases of suicide among the youth. When you look at this lockdown, so far the district has registered more than 29 cases of suicide, and these are majorly the youth who keep on committing the suicide. Some of them are ending up taking poison, others end up hanging themselves. Recently, there was a case where a youth hanged himself in one of the police cells in one of the sub-counties called Kulba sub-county, and the cases have hit up to around 29 cases in the district, and this is actually creating worry on the leaders. Now, I tried to interact with the district police commander, the acting district police commander, where she did confirm that these cases are on the increase, and they're trying their best to see that they keep on reaching the communities to talk to them sensitizing them about the dangers of such kind of acts, and also how they can be in position to share problems so that they can either be helped by the necessary authorities or maybe be guided by some of the community members. But Romeo, that's the latest development coming in from Koboko. I need to tell you that leaders are worried over the increasing cases of suicide among the youth. Majorly, some of them are blaming the lockdown, where most of these youth, some of them who are initially supposed to be in school, are at homes. Romeo, back to you in the studio.
All right, colors developments coming in from Koboko, young people ending their lives as a result of the stress. Also the COVID-19 pandemic that is causing so many shocks and vulnerabilities. And that's exactly what we are talking about right now and right here on Morning at NTV. We are now joined by the esteemed Honorable Martin Ojara Mapenduzi, the MP Badegla. We would like to talk about government interventions, whether they've been effective as far as arresting the troubles that have been brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. We do have Honorable joining us right now. A very good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Indeed. Help us assess government's interventions in the wake of this COVID-19 pandemic. Has it been effective?
Well, fortunately, when Parliament decided to form a committee, the Parliamentary Task Force on COVID-19, fortunately, I was one of the task force members. And I think Parliament took the right decision to establish the task force. And the task force was mandated to move around the country, first of all, to assess the level of preparedness and how much government is doing in as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And the 40-member task force we were given very clear mandates, and we went around the country and looking at how health facilities are functioning.
Indeed.
Looking at how resources are being utilized, and looking at the gaps and how the district task forces and all that. We had the opportunity to visit almost, I would say, 90% of the health facilities in the country. And I can tell you, we realize that we have got very committed men and women down there who are in the front line. Our medical team, our medical personnel are doing a fantastic job. However, there are challenges that the task force identified.
What are some of those?
Quite a number of challenges. First, I think looking at the time when we had the first lockdown, right from last year in March to this day, you will realize that government spent close to 4 trillion shilling. But still, the challenges are
persisted.
Persisting. But again, the question we gave is that for how long is government going to continue spending this money? Because COVID is not going to, it's not going away. Right now, the experts are talking about the third wave, and many of them think it's likely to be a lot more serious than what we have experienced. And so Ugandans have to really know that things are not yet okay. But again, our question as a task force was, how much does it take? Because the experts are saying for the country to confront this virus fairly well and manage the situation so life can begin to get normal again.
Yes, Martin.
We need to have close to 21 million people vaccinated.
So far we are talking about 1.3 million.
Yes, about 1.3 or so. And so looking at that, and the information we got from the Minister of Health and Minister of Finance is that government needs about 2.8 trillion to have the 21 million people vaccinated.
Indeed. So
our question was, should Parliament not pay a lot more attention to supporting the idea of providing more funds so that more people, the 21 people, get vaccinated as soon as possible? So we stop spending money anyhow, because as long as we have not vaccinated the 21 million people, we will continue having waves after waves, and so we will keep on spending more money. So it's about channeling resources in the direction that can produce a much faster and sustainable kind of result. But the other thing we found out is that our health, personnel are struggling a lot. They are making sacrifices, but the things that they expect to be made available in some of the places.
The issue of the PPEs.
PPEs and some facilities are struggling to get oxygen. We went to other places where the frontliners are not getting the facilitation they were meant to get, like race allowances. Took quite a long time until when Parliament started giving pressure. Now they are being paid. Of course, in some places they've not been paid for long. So there are quite a number of recommendations that the task force, and I believe me, the task force did a wonderful job. And again, in July, when the Right Honourable Prime Minister gave a report to Parliament, part of the report was the beneficiary list for COVID-19 relief fund. And Parliament decided that the list be scrutinized. And so the Public Accounts Committee Central and Public Accounts Committee Local Government were given the task to go and scrutinize this. And for the last 2 weeks or so, we have been involved in scrutinizing, looking at the whole thing. And we look at a number of areas. We were given clear terms of reference, and majorly first to look at the policy framework that inform government decision in coming up with this intervention, but also to look at what criteria government used to determine the categories of people who should benefit from this. We also look at the method of disbursement. We look at how the beneficiaries were registered and how much money they received and whether the right or the intended beneficiaries actually got the money. So in general, I would say Parliament is trying to do its best in making sure that government is held accountable, but also making sure that public funds gets utilized in the direction it's supposed to be. And also, I think Parliament has never been hesitant in supporting the executive in making sure that resources are made available.
Of course, Martin Ojerama Penduzi, you do have citizens who are watching Morning at NTV and experts who've been saying that maybe Parliament should have been involved when it comes to the drafting of these interventions and implementation of the same. But what we've seen is the executive mounting most of these interventions, 80%, and then Parliament coming in to hold them accountable. Like, Ugandans felt like Parliament should have been at the forefront when it comes to the fight against COVID-19. Legislators are always in close proximity with the voters and so forth. You know who are vulnerable. You know how many there are. And that's why we ended up with wrong data from the Ministry of Gender, because government was highly involved in these interventions. What should have been the role of Parliament in this fight against COVID-19?
Well, the executive and Parliament definitely play different roles, all right? And I think Parliament has done its part and has continued to do its part effectively. Of course, it's the mandate of the executive to initiate these ideas and look at what works for this country, and then the executive brings to Parliament, and Parliament looks through and to determine whether it's the best idea and take decisions on providing the resources needed, but also playing oversight role. So generally, I would say Parliament has done its part and has continued to do its part. Well, there could be areas that we could have done better, but I think in as far as our role as Parliament is concerned, I think we are trying our best to make sure we provide what this country needs, and also providing what the executive needs to push on, make sure we are able to contain the situation. Well, it has been a very challenging period. Challenging not only to Parliament, not only to the executive, the private sector has had a very challenging period. For some of us who go to the field and go to our areas to assess the situation, it's quite tough. And Ugandans are right to say things are not okay, they're right to be bitter, okay? But I don't think the solution is going to be in lamentation. I think we should be able to fully provide what is needed. And I think that's why this task force I think it has been the best report produced by a body created by Parliament. And we have seen the executive beginning to implement a lot of the things that were recommended, including having more health workers recruited, having their salaries increased, and a number of things. And we are beginning to see action. But you see, we should not take long. And I think when decisions, when recommendations are made, the executive should be able to, analyze and make sure things are worked on, and that helps. So, of course, this is my first time to join Parliament, the 11th Parliament. But I know the 10th Parliament. Of course, COVID started the time the 10th Parliament was coming to, it's last year. But I think the 10th Parliament tried, and I'll tell you tried because the Parliament provided resources, including resources for procuring vaccine. Unfortunately, the money provided by the 10th Parliament to this day, we have been asking, where's the vaccine? And the explanation we have got from the Minister of Health is that things have become a bit tough in terms of how to access this vaccine. The procedures have become quite challenging. You can't just go and buy the vaccine. There are lots of procedures and bureaucratic kind of lines you have to follow. And again, Parliament has provided more money to get more vaccine, even when the other one has not yet been done.
Indeed.
Hopefully, we will have that sorted out. But I think generally, Parliament has been able to perform its part. If there are areas where we have not done well, I think there are definitely rooms for improvement.
All right.
But all in all,
Indeed.
so far, I mean, it's going on well.
Honorable Ojara Martin Mapenduzi says it's his first time in the 11th Parliament, but he did so well, trouncing Honorable Leandro Komakech to win over Badeg-Laibe constituency in that regard. We are keeping a keen eye on this slew of legislators because they are really offering oversight than the 10th Parliament. Thank you very much, Honorable. We shall continue to engage you. We have an economist, Francis Muhire, and he is also a lecturer at Makerere University Business School. Let's talk about what Parliament has been doing when it comes to COVID-19 interventions and so forth. Do you think that they've done a good job?
Well, I mean, they have just entered the house. It's not even, a quarter. But one thing I want to first start with what he has said, that the Parliament provided the resources or the funds to buy vaccines. They haven't provided more, but the Minister of Health can't, get these vaccines. I want to assure you that what is happening, this is like a wake-up call to everyone, especially to developing economies. We have always been having this tendency where we have to wait for solutions coming from abroad, especially from the Western North America. So I want to assure you that when we talk about this vaccine, there's a lot of economics behind it. When you talk of vaccine development or the market, it is controlled, 90% of the vaccine market is controlled by only about 6 firms, pharmaceutical firms. We're talking of GSK from UK, we're talking of Pfizer, Merck, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson from USA, and Sanofi, which is a French company. So you can imagine, and Biotech, Germany. The whole production is, dominated by about 4 countries. So what does this mean? These countries like USA, when you look at, for example, the best technology in development of vaccine, which is mRNA, the USA government started funding this project 11 years ago. So they have control and patents over it. So these developing economies, for them, they want to make money. These pharmaceutical companies, they want to make money. So they make sure they control the production. And for them, their target is always high-end or developed economies. That's why you see economies like Canada, they have booked and hoarded. Any vaccine developed in the European Union right now cannot get out.
Of course, this is a lesson for us, Honorable Mapenduzi, to focus on our own research. Indeed.
So they want first get that profit from those high profit margins, those developed economies. So what does this mean? That these countries realized this and invested in research and development. That's why every day I say, until this government realizes and arranges its priorities, we invest much into health and education. Then we are going to be, in these issues. But I want to make this point that while we are giving much attention to COVID-19, COVID-19 is just a natural accelerator or a catalyst for what is happening. The global economy or the entire world today is going through a great, inevitable, and unprecedented change. If you pause and see what is happening, the world is changing. First of all, you have the fourth industrial revolution going on. You have evolution of money going on. We are trying to shift from fiat money to digital currency, talk of CBDC or central bank digital currency, virtual currency, cryptocurrency. However much when you go to sub-Saharan Africa and other developing economies, they don't know that this is happening. Talk about deglobalization, you know. All this is to do with COVID-19. COVID-19 is just trying to help us that there is a great change going on. You have to pause.
To make that huge leap.
Yeah, you have to pause, make a great reset or robust reset, and then start afresh, meaning that you have to stop doing the way you've been conducting business. That is lesson number one. Unfortunately, when
but what I've noticed in Uganda, even though the situation warrants for change, our small and medium-sized enterprises have been unable to make that shift all the way to that digital economy simply because of the low penetration of the internet within our country. That's what I've noticed. They know what they need to do, but the infrastructure is largely there or limited.
of course, that is the role of the government. However, these SMEs are trying to adjust with what is going on, but it's the government that has to put this infrastructure in place. When you talk of, let's say, SMEs or even micro, or trying to get on board and shift into the digital world, I mean, this all rotates around internet data. That's what we're talking of at the fourth industrial revolution that is going on. It revolves around internet data. So, but you've seen instead the government has imposed more taxes. I'm sure even the honorable, he will find it internet to be expensive. So what about a common Ugandan? So we are talking about encouraging micro, small and medium enterprises to get on board, but you're introducing taxes. So that's the challenge we have. But to take you back, I'm saying that this change that is happening, some countries predicted this, that this might happen. That's why you have those countries which are in position to produce vaccines in the shortest period of time. So this requires that the government has to stop doing business the way we've been handling business. Otherwise, what you're looking right now, what is biting, these are just short term, but you have long term, implications.
Indeed.
So the government has to pause, and we set, we have that great reset.
Sorry, Honorable is already here to engage us on that. Is it rational to institute a new set of taxes on Ugandans who are not even earning? When you do have small and medium-sized enterprises that are already grappling, but then you institute more taxes. Landlords are not getting any money from their tenants, and then you still say, I'm putting some 30% money, income rental tax.
Well, maybe before even getting into that, I just speaking from where I stopped, I think and I fully agree with you.
Indeed.
That number one, this fire brigade style of work has to stop. All right.
Indeed.
And I think just as you put it, COVID has given us the opportunity to learn this I think government of Uganda, I want to believe,
Indeed.
has got to to understand that we need to be a lot more organized. We need to build systems that work.
Indeed.
Because a lot of the intervention is kind of reactionary, and that's not good for this country. And
Never anticipated.
exactly, talking about building, the health system that works is not something we are just talking about today. This has been the story.
Thank you.
All right, for decades. Everyone keeps on saying, we don't need to send our people abroad
Indeed.
when they need medical help. We can do it here. We have the resources, all right? We can do the things we need. So people stop going to India, people stop going to other countries. And today we're experiencing it. When now you cannot go to those countries,
Indeed.
you have to deal with your situation.
Because they are dealing with their fair share of the troubles.
So I think it's about the kind of direction government takes in channeling resources, but also in planning and making sure systems are well built.
Indeed.
And we are going to continue having that problem. Secondly, desperate people make terrible mistakes. Even when you try to provide a solution, as long as you do it in a desperate manner, you want to deal with something, and you have not prepared yourself, and you don't have the structures that function well, you are bound to having lots of challenges. And that is what we have seen. So I think it goes back to government. that, you know, we should take this as a lesson, as a big lesson.
Indeed.
So we begin to put the pieces together so that in future, when we are confronted with such a situation, we are able to do better and provide, you know, safety and security to our citizens. That is one. But the other thing that is equally disturbing is how resources are utilized. Okay, I don't think in this country the problem is the lack of money. I think there is money.
Misuse of the money.
Exactly. So the problem is misuse of money. How people charge with the responsibility of, you know, using that money for the good of the country. How they turn around and begin to manipulate situation. I think we have talked about corruption. The president has made promises, and different people say we are going to fight corruption, but we are not walking the talk, all right?
Because we hear what you're saying, and we were wondering why no one was penalized at the Uganda Development Bank. 1 trillion was put there for the SMEs. 455 billion was approved, but still none of the SMEs got that money. It went to big business. No one took the fall over that. We are still seeing officials moving left, right, and center at UDB.
That's quite sad.
And we are putting aside more money for the SMEs.
And I think as a country, we have allowed such impunity to you know, find space within our systems and in this country. And as long as we keep on giving that kind of environment, we keep on massaging, you know, corruption and trying to appear serious when actually things are not being done the right way.
Indeed,
we will continue having problems. And again, coming to the question you have put.
The taxes?
The taxes. Well, obviously, the country needs to find ways of making sure the economy works for us.
Indeed.
We need to make sure services are provided. And so government gets money through the taxes and different other ways.
But like Francis said, we need to change the way we were operating.
That's right. I agree with you.
Indeed.
But again, we need to be very considerate. We need to understand the kind of situation we are facing.
Amazing.
The economy is not doing well, and everyone is having a pinch.
Yeah.
It has equally affected Parliament. We
Indeed.
have had serious budget cuts.
Indeed.
Even the committees that, like the committee I chair, has had a real pinch. I was sharing with you the other day.
Indeed.
When we were preparing to go to the field. The committee was not able to move fully because we then have to adjust ourselves and understand that our economy is not doing well.
Indeed.
So government needs to look at the areas that needs to be supported. And supporting doesn't mean irrationally coming with taxes that are not realistic. I think there is need to understand that even without putting a lot more burden on the citizens, we can still navigate through approaches that work. And you gave the example of money being given to support the private
SMEs,
sector.
yes.
And then you realize the money is not actually reaching where it's supposed to reach.
Indeed.
So that's where the problem is. Why do we have to put more taxes when you have got money that should have been utilized correctly? It's not being utilized correctly.
And before you find out why it was never utilized, you're giving out more money, 200 billion.
It is an insult.
Without,
an insult to
yes.
the taxpayers, but it's also an insult to the country. So I think it's about how we utilize the little resources we have got, and the culture of dependency that we have got this country into is quite
The donor
sad.
dependency.
Exactly. It's
All
quite
right.
sad. And
How
as
sad?
long as you know, as long as we depend heavily on these other countries, we will continue having problems.
How so?
Like the economists put it. We should be able to support our own people. Our own people are very creative. They
Indeed.
can do a lot of things.
Indeed.
We have got scientists. We have got researchers. Look at the people. Look at Professor Wang. You know, look
Edward
at,
Kaziri.
Exactly. Look at Alice Lamwaga.
Indeed.
You know, at Gulu University.
Indeed.
These are people who have put their, you know, mind in doing the things that can provide solution.
Indeed.
And I'm happy the president came forward and said these people need to be supported.
Indeed.
But it's not just about the president. It should be an initiative driven by the country. It should not just be an individual.
Indeed.
Every time there is something, the president needs to come and say, look, we need to do this. Yes, he provides leadership, but I think
we
should
need
be
a
able
structure.
Exactly. We should be able to build a structural
That
system.
helps people like Ogwang, people like Edward Kazire, and so forth, Ramaka.
That's right. So I think it's important that we begin to look at the direction that can make Uganda as a country move away from that I dependency. We begin to provide solutions for ourselves. We need to do things locally.
Indeed. You talked about misuse of funds and so forth. We cannot veer away from this conversation without talking about the main conversation that is causing so many tanks to move left, right, and center. The issue of the 200 million that was accorded to the MPs in the wake of a devastating COVID-19 pandemic. Was it rational? I mean, you're talking about cutting costs, and then you do have MPs receiving 200 million Uganda shillings.
Well, I think
to buy cars.
I think you are looking at two things. You are looking at the timing, and you are looking at that money.
Indeed. The fact we are downsizing, we're cutting off on travel, meetings and so forth.
If your biggest concern is with the timing, then I would say it came at a time when every Ugandan is feeling
the pinch.
And so even when the right thing is being done, you are not likely to appreciate.
Indeed.
Right? So in terms of the timing, I'll not talk about it. But in terms of
cost cut,
the money that has been given and why the money was given, first of all, this is something that was budgeted for by the previous parliament, okay, and obviously members of parliament need to perform their duties, and they can do that effectively.
So it was justified.
Exactly. But I'll bring another angle that you need to understand.
Indeed.
The question is, why should members of parliament be given the 200 million to buy vehicles?
Indeed.
Members of parliament need transport. And I interacted with some of the technical people within parliament and gave them the difficult questions that many Ugandans kept on giving. Number one, was it realistic to give the money? The answer is yes. Why? Because they told me initially, earlier, much earlier in the early days, the discussion was whether government can buy vehicles cheaply and give to members of parliament.
Yes.
But again, they realized that would not be sustainable. Why? Because you need to, the moment government buys vehicle, then you need to recruit drivers, then you need to provide fuel, and then you need to maintain and service the vehicles. That becomes much more expensive. If you are to handle that in 5 years, just dealing with one member of parliament, the driver, servicing the vehicle, fuel, and all that, it's terrible. That would rock our economy.
Indeed.
Meaning each member of parliament would require probably 700 million or more if we are to do it that way. So I think parliament took the right decision that, okay, provide that money, let each member of parliament buy a vehicle, and the burden of paying the driver, servicing the vehicle, and buying fuel is the responsibility of that member of parliament. You don't give additional money. I think that was a good decision. And the other thing is, whether it's right for MPs, it's deserving for MPs to get that money.
Yes, I remember.
Well, why should members of parliament be treated differently anyway? In the district chairpersons are given vehicles.
Yes.
Their vehicles are the double cabin pickup that I used to drive was bought at about 150 million or 100 and so. But the driver and fuel and all that provided by government. So I think when it comes to parliament, some people want to create it's some kind of exaggeration.
Yes.
That is diversionary. And I think we should be able to deal with the real issues. And for me, the real issue is that, are we trying to provide solutions to this country? Do we look at the challenges that our people are faced with? And do we timely design strategies that can deal with the challenges?
All right.
And so that should be the debate.
Francis Muhire, what do you make of all this? I mean, this money for the MPs for the cars came through at a time when we were discussing the meager 100,000 Uganda shillings that was being given to Ugandans who were vulnerable. And during that time, government was saying we do not have enough money. That's why we've decided to give out this 100,000 Uganda shillings to cushion Ugandans who were affected by COVID-19 pandemic. But then later on, we see 200 million Uganda shillings going to each MP to actually buy cars. Don't you think that was excess spending on their part?
Thank you, Romeo. Just I said that COVID has been here for over 20 months. It didn't come, yesterday.
Indeed.
It's 20 months here. Yes, these ones, the 11th Parliament has come, the 10th Parliament, the one which approved that money. But there are two things you have to look at. One thing, we have a very big government, of which this government, in terms of the size, of which around 15.6 trillion shillings is actually spent on non-salaries or wages, and this is a recurrent expenditure. This money is, what is paying the MPs' cars, those district, officials' cars, and all other government workers. So we are literally spending over 19% of the entire budget on this recurrent, expenditure. So the question is, don't you think it's high time we change the way we spend? That's why we talk of adjusting our expenditure behavior. Yes, the MP will need money. I mean, will need the car. That is okay. But how many MPs? You're talking of a poor country like Uganda, which cannot afford spending on luxury, having a big size of the parliament. You're talking about 529 MPs for just a population of 42 million, Ugandan. So the other issue the other point I want to make is that when you look at Uganda's politics, politics have been commercialized. Everything is wrong. The entire public choice mechanism. You have this kind of system that attracts political investors. I call them political investors. Hopefully, Martin, with his discussion, I think is not among those political investors, but the majority. Because the system we have, the commercialized politics, attracts more of political investors, not leaders. And this, goes all the way from bottom to top. From
where do I benefit mentality.
Exactly. So this is what happens. During elections, of course, you have these political investors who invest everything they have. They sell land. It's a do or die.
So at the end of the day, they have to recoup the money.
Yes. So that's why I don't expect these political investors to be like, what is going on? Everyone needs to sacrifice. Trust me, you won't see that happen. And to solve this problem, we have to start with the entire public choice mechanism, starting with, sensitizing the electorates that, please, these handouts are very dangerous. You need to vote leaders, not political investors. And
well, Honorable Mapendus is not a political investor. He has been to Arua, he has been to Lira, he has been to Gulu, trying to assess how the money that was given to the beneficiaries, actually whether or not it reached them and whether it achieved its goal. Talk to us about that. What did you see in Arua, Gulu and Lira?
Well, before I talk about...
I understand you do...
maybe just to get back to my brother
here. Yes, Honorable.
Sometimes we are very unfair to politicians. We think they're the same. We end up using blanket statements that create a bad image. I do not want to say that we are angels, okay? But I think we should be treated differently. And the moment we think all politicians are the same and we brand them as political investors and so on, it doesn't help to make things better. I think we should, in trying to hold leaders accountable, we should be fair and we should also be able to appreciate when there are positive steps being made. And I can tell you the 11th Parliament is different. I have seen it. I have been for a few months. I have seen how things are done, the changes that we have in Parliament, the decisions that are taken, and the level of involvement and participation. And
you don't have heard this from the 10th Parliament, but Honorable Mapenduzi told me that Nabanja, the Prime Minister, was actually conned with this new COVID-19 relief fund. Tell me about that.
Well, I do not want to go into that because on the 21st of July, Parliament gave us an assignment to go out and scrutinize the report and report back to Parliament. So it would not be procedural for me to start talking about the content of our findings before reporting back to Parliament.
That is on Monday next week.
So I'll request you to give me time. Let us finish this assignment, report back to Parliament, and we'll be free to talk about it. Yes. So whether she was conned or not conned, please let's not go into that. But the other thing, so what I was telling my brother here is that yes, I fully understand your frustration.
No, it's not frustration, and that's why I say maybe he's not one of them.
Yes.
I've had these discussions. I'm not branding all politicians as that.
But it's good to hear this new term, political investors. Hopefully, we will be able to fight that kind of mindset, so we don't have political investors. And we need to have a country where people look at leadership as a responsibility, not just as a position where you want to be powerful, you want to get resources, you want to do that. So it's a process. And Ugandans have to be frank about it, like you're putting.
So, Honorable, you've been in Gulu, you've been in Arua, you've been in Lira. Now you're right back into the Central Division to actually assess again the issue of the 100,000 Uganda shillings, COVID-19 relief. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, and in the process of executing the task given by Parliament, we went to different parts of the country. We actually decided to form 4 different groups. So one went to Eastern Uganda, Southwestern, Northern, and Western Uganda. So we are done with those parts, and we will be concluding with Central Uganda, where the 4 groups will be handling different entities, and then we will report back. But I can tell you, there are things that need to be worked on. Yes, the intention of government was a good one, but I think the processes and the manner in which the activities were carried out. These are part of what we are going to report to Parliament. So I'm being careful not to get into the details.
I know.
But definitely.
Indeed. But of course, you've been kind enough to make time to speak to us, because by yesterday you were traveling from Gulu, but today, 7:30 a.m., you're here at Morning at NTV to tell us a little bit, tidbits of the information that you plan to highlight in your report next week. We shall actually call on you again to expand more on what you did find out in those 3 jurisdictions. All right, thank you very much, Honorable Martin Ojarama Penduzi. Also, Francis Muhire, the lecturer with Makerere University Business School. He comes with a wealth of information. We shall continue to call on to you to talk about the effect of the pandemic on the economy post-COVID-19 pandemic. You're still watching Morning at NTV. We do have a lot more in the pipeline. Let's take a breather. We'll return shortly after this break.